If you have a child with a disability, you no doubt have questions about how you can navigate the systems and services so that you have the support you need. It can be overwhelming. Today's guest has walked this journey with her son. So grab your cup of coffee and get ready to do some learning that is going to inspire and help you relax about the process, knowing you're not alone. Does your child have a speech-language delay and you really want them to talk? Do difficult behaviors derail home life and you know the frustration is a communication struggle? Does your child see a speech therapist and you wonder, what do they do and how can I help? If these or similar questions are in your mind, this podcast is for you. Hello, my name is Dinalynn Rosenbusch. I am a speech-language pathologist that has worked with children from birth to 21 for 3 decades. And in my classrooms, I see you wanting to connect with the heart of your child, but their speech and language skills create a barrier. So if you have a kiddo that has difficult behaviors, needs to expand their language or learn to say speech sounds, and maybe even receives speech therapy, stay tuned, because in this podcast, you will learn how to use your daily life as a tool to communication practice and how to do that practice. You will become confident knowing you are making the difference you want to make. And you will hear success stories of parents who have navigated these struggles already. We'll do this all while focusing on building deep, meaningful connection and confidence in your kiddo. So grab a cup of coffee along with a notebook and pen. It's time to speak in the way your child's brain understands. And that is the language of play. All right, welcome back to March, where we have guest episodes on every episode this month. Woohoo! Calling your attention to the show notes. There are always links in the show notes for you to follow if you are looking for free content or connections to our guests or me. And I haven't read a review in a while, so I wanted to read you a review today. This review is from Finna Woman. She writes, "Love this podcast," and gives it 5 stars. Thank you, Dinalynn, for starting this podcast. Misbehavior is often rooted in misunderstanding. This podcast will help parents understand how their child communicates and how they can better communicate with their kids to strengthen their relationship and trust with their child. I will be willing to share with my no-problem parents. Thank you, Finna Woman, and I do happen to know that that is Jackie Finneman of No Problem Parents. Thank you very much. I love working with her. Today's guest has walked this special education journey with her son that has multiple disabilities. And she wrote a book on the topic so that you don't have to struggle the way she did. She is with us today. Kelley Coleman is a feature film development executive turned author and advocate for her parent caregivers and individuals with disabilities. Her book, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child, Your Guide to the Essential Systems, Services, and Supports, draws upon over a decade of experience, including her own experience parenting a child with multiple disabilities. Kelley lives in Los Angeles with her husband, 2 boys, and her son's trusty service dog. Kelley, thank you for coming to the Language of Play today. Congratulations on your book. That's fabulous. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I love your podcast and your community. I love talking about language and play together. And I just think it's so important because we can forget that connection. So I'm excited to talk about my book, but also just how you approach language and communication in all its forms.
Yeah, we enjoyed a conversation when we got to know each other, and we had this fabulous conversation about language and how our language shapes what we do, it shapes who we are, it shapes our relationships and how we connect. And there's a lot of energy that is in the words we choose. And we had this great conversation. We left it thinking, oh my gosh, you have to be on this podcast. And we left it thinking we could probably talk for 6 hours.
Yes.
But here we are. We're not going to talk for 6 hours. And we need to pick a few things out of this book, but there are so many things we could pick out of your book. I have the book in front of me, listeners. And it is a very easy to read book. I read it on the airplane one time. And I thought, man, if other parents had this as a resource, they wouldn't feel so alone. They wouldn't feel like, I don't know how to do my next thing.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to do my next thing is so jarring, and it kind of freezes so many of us, because especially when we have kids with disabilities, and also just parenting in general, like there are so many things to do. And I have two amazing kiddos. One has disabilities, one does not. And the paperwork and the planning and just all of the stuff can be so overwhelming. And thinking lists and bullet points and all of that, and was excited to be able to translate that into a book where people pick it up and you feel like, oh, I can actually do this. I know I can just do this one thing, and here's some bullet points, and great, I'm going to go have some tea.
Right, right. And I hope we can talk about a couple of those bullet points that are the really nitty gritty of what it is that you would recommend where parents begin. And I think we'll have the link for the book in the show notes and your contact information, whatever is needed. One of the things about your book that I really, really like, and I think our listeners will appreciate too, is that you have a personal story and photo in every chapter. And it brings the book close to me. It makes it feel like I know this person. And working in special education as a speech pathologist, when I read those stories, I thought of the many parents that I've worked with that have had similar stories along the way. And so it made it real. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And thank you so much for pointing that out. Not only could I talk about my kids forever because I'm a mom and that's what I do, but if the book was just, here's a bunch of lists, here's some templates, here's some worksheets, go for it, then it is just not motivating at all, because like you said, there's just not that connection. And what is the connection to the material, but also to ourselves? So much of this feels like I'm a person over here and I'm a caregiver over here, and I just can't put all of this together. And so it's so important for me to create that connection. And, on one hand, certainly you are not alone in this, but also you can actually do all of the paperwork and the planning. And when it feels like you have that emotional connection, it just feels doable in a way that is, I think, what we all need.
My guess is that it was feeling doable like that because you got to know people that were also doing it too.
Yes, the getting to know actual humans is huge. And at the beginning of this journey, some friends of ours whose son is autistic, and we had been through a little bit of the journey with them. But, having a kid with multiple disabilities, including autism, but also an undiagnosed genetic syndrome, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, cortical vision impairment, feeding tube, sensory, gross motor, fine motor, alternate communication. He's like, I'm just going to check all the boxes.
That's a lot to deal with in your home. That is a lot to deal with.
It is a lot. And I feel like I always need to give the caveat of that, of we're very honest about what's easy and what's hard. And there are some things that are very hard. What's easy is, again, I could talk about my kid all day. He is just has this magnetic personality and is the mayor of everywhere he goes, and will just high five and blow kisses. And he is happy to be in the world. And not all humans move through the world that way. And so even with our whole list of things, we also have a huge advantage that we have a kid who wakes up happy and comfortable in the world. And the process of getting to know my child, getting to know other families, is really what makes this all doable.
Yeah, I can easily see that the encouragement would come by being with other families. One of the things that you and I talked about before is the importance for kids to have real life kids as friends that actually have disabilities too. Can you
Yes.
talk about that?
Yes, my thinking on this has evolved and emerged over time. There's so much push for inclusion that is right and that is good and is absolutely the thing to do. What I have noticed, and our school district is massive, so you see a full range of so many things. In the inclusion conversation, other kids with disabilities are often left out of that conversation. So this really became apparent when we were looking at elementary schools. Our son is still in elementary school, but we were thinking about where he would go to kindergarten. And he'd been in a special ed preschool class very successfully. And if he had gone to our homeschool by our house, he would have been the only child with a visible disability. And he absolutely could go there, is legally allowed to go to the school where we live because that's how it works. And he is entitled to a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment under the law, just like every single kid. But I looked around and I was like, there's no one like him.
Yeah, so your mommy intuition, your mommy radar went right up, didn't it?
Right up. And our other son was already at the school. The school was wonderful. We were very happy there. But would I feel comfortable with my kid being the lone outlier? And that doesn't mean other kids didn't have disabilities that aren't visible, but he would be, the quote unquote weird kid because he is visibly disabled. He has behaviors and communications and outbursts, often of joy, that I don't know that any of these kids have seen, the teachers have seen. It would be a fantastic educational experience for others. However, for my son, I felt like I wanted him to thrive, being proud of every bit of who he is, and seeing other kids with disabilities, whether that is kids who are stimming in class because that is what they need in order to pay attention to the lesson, whether that is kids who have the AAC, alternative and augmentative communication devices, also known as an iPad with a program, whether it is just kids who move through the world differently. He's presently at a school that has a large special ed program, and he splits his days between a special ed class and a general education class. So, everybody's certainly getting the education of my kid's awesome, disability's just fine, we're all good. But at the same time, he is also seeing every day the validation of my friends move through the world in ways that I do. And I have other friends who don't move through the world in ways that I do. And we should all be so lucky to be validated and to have our horizons expanded all at the same time.
That's fabulous. What a fantastic mindset. I bet you didn't start there. But before I ask you where you started, I want to acknowledge that parents are our children's best advocate. And when you had this is just a highlight here, your gut intuition, your sense that this particular setting, even though you liked the setting, this particular setting doesn't seem right for my child. And you have your reasons, but ultimately it was that you just sensed it and then you went with it. And then, you made your reasons why, but you were able to follow that. And that's not always easy to do. So congratulations. I love that you are being an advocate for what you believe about your child, because at the deepest level, there's no one that knows your child better than you as a parent.
Yes. And I'm so glad you acknowledged that all of this can be really messy. And something that can become very messy and very challenging is I am not disabled. One of my children is, and there are parts of his life experience and his identity that I can't relate to from firsthand experience. So there is a huge amount of intuition. There's a huge amount of guesswork. And at every turn and whenever possible, if I can follow his lead, even from an early age, boy, that makes things easier. And if we are following the lead of people with lived experience as disabled individuals, it actually makes it so much easier to figure all of this out. I believe firmly I'm the person, and my husband and my other son and our service dog, we're the ones living in the house every day. We know each other best. Any mom of a 10-year-old has some agency or has an amount of agency over their lives. And that's okay. And that's as it should be. But what are the things where I can lean in and learn about his life experience, and certainly learning from real life disabled people about the importance of, yes, inclusion, yes, full opportunity in all the ways, but also validating the identity as a disabled person is not only feels like the right thing to do, but it's exciting to just say, this is who you are, and we love every bit of that. And we're excited to have you around other people that you can recognize and share that with them.
That's beautiful, because he's able to relate and he's able to grow, build his connections, his bonds. That's really powerful stuff. Now, when you mentioned your child as having all these different disabilities, like you gave us quite a list.
Let's try letting things out. Yeah.
Yes, you can just spit them out because you're familiar with all that terminology. One of the things that you said was follow his lead. And every child shows what their interests are, how they lead a different way. Your two sons would obviously show their lead in a different way. How do you see it? How do you know it with your disabled child? Mm-hmm. What is his lead that you are able to follow?
Mm-hmm. So Aaron has evolved so much in terms of his expressive communication, what he is able to express to us, because he does have significant support needs. Like you said, that looks very different. He is not having a spoken word conversation with me about his day and what he wants and all the things. From when he was younger and his communication wasn't as evolved as it is now, even just noticing, like, wow, you have a really hard time in the car. You know what? It'll take us a little bit longer, but we could actually walk and put you in the stroller to the grocery store. And then it got him used to that trip. And what are the supports that he needs in order to make the car ride okay, whether it's something like that. And as he's gotten older, even simple things of, which shirt do you want to wear? And he's a 10-year-old boy, disability or not. I think a lot of 10-year-old boys are like, that's cool, mom, as long as I'm clothed, like preferably not clothed. Like, I don't care what shirt I wear. But the lesson in which shirt and where do you want to sit at the table for breakfast is an exercise for me as much as it is for him, because I'm teaching him, you have agency in your own life. I want to hear what you have to say, and I will respect that decision. And you know what? His shirt today does not match his pants. I'm just going to go out there and say it. I looked at him and I was like, I wouldn't have put that together. But he put that together, and you know what? We're going to run with that. And he might be looking at what I'm wearing, been like, I wouldn't have put that together, Mom. Nope.
And just I love that.
All behavior as communication.
Yes. Yes.
And if we are starting from there, whether it is a full-blown tantrum or whether it is, him signing, I want hug, or telling me, want hug, please, on his AAC device, all behavior is communication, and just really internalizing that for myself. And, I know you've spoken on your podcast before about how there are some behaviors that are not safe, and that as parents, we absolutely need to put our foot down. And if he reaches for the knife block, that is a non-starter. Like, he wouldn't do that, but he would run towards moving cars because he loves moving cars. So that communication, I understand, and I know when I need to be firm, but also when he's doing something that's not actually wrong. And if he is squealing and clapping and doing his dance at the lettuce at the grocery store, like, cool, let's dance for the lettuce, because he's communicating that he is very joyful about this lettuce, and like, I'm there for it.
I love how you're able to just roll with him. That's one of the things as an educator, when we would see kids come to school in absolutely ridiculous colors and stripes and patterns put together, we smile and love it, because we think, you dressed yourself today. That's fabulous.
Yes.
Honestly, that's how we as educators think of it. And it always surprises me how many parents come into a conference and they feel like they have to kind of be embarrassed a little bit and hide their eyes and say, well, my daughter dressed herself today. Like I can just only celebrate that. It's obvious when your children dress themselves. And it is fabulous. We are celebrating you as a parent when you allow them to. So when you say this and you allow him to celebrate the lettuce and you allow him to celebrate whatever, it is fabulous. Okay, so now there's one more thing that I want you to talk about before I let you go. And that is, you mentioned in your book that people should use the word disability, not special. And I come from the background of this is special education. We call it special education. Why do you say that? Because you were actually the first person that I've ever heard say that. And since that time that you and I first spoke, I think I've heard it 3 more times. I mean, I understand the concept, but it was really surprising to me. So I want you to just take it from your perspective.
Yes, thank you for asking. And honestly, it was surprising to me at first too. I think the two of us grew up at a moment in time and of a generation where everything was special needs. And certainly that term has been institutionalized in special education, in special needs trusts. I'm not going to vilify or get angry at anyone who uses terminology that is becoming outdated, but I think it is an exciting conversation that language is always evolving. And if we are getting our information about disability, people who are disabled, then we are getting a more complete picture. And what I have been told over and over for my book, I interviewed over 40 experts and many of whom are disabled themselves. And disability is the word that is used in law, saying special doesn't get us any protections under the law. It is an objective, neutral descriptor. If I say my child is disabled, it doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean good or that he's a superhero. It is just an objective fact of who he is. And by tiptoeing around the word disability and by saying, oh, he's special, it's inferring that the word disability is a negative, and it's just who my kid is. And talking to so many disabled adults and leaders and experts who have said, this is the word that the disability community has chosen. And talking to a woman who has this very accomplished profession at the moment and previously was a 2-time White House appointee who is disabled. And she was like, it is treating me like a child to say that I have special needs. She's like, no, it's cool. I'm disabled and I'm a grown up and I'm going to go back to work at the White House now. So, and I've not spoken with all disabled adults, but I've never spoken with a disabled adult who says, I prefer special needs. But many who have said disability is the word. For me personally, it has been a journey to not say special needs, because that is what I said. It was originally part of the book title, but because I got my information from real life disabled people, my thinking has evolved. And I think it's an important part of the conversation, even if we're saying, oh, this is hard. This is the language I've always used. It's in special education. It's not going to change in our lifetimes, probably. But where can I listen to people with the lived experience? And it will continue to evolve, which is exciting.
That's really well said. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to show that I have the book here.
Thank you for asking. Oh,
And
look, me too.
Yay, we both got your book in hand. All right. I'm going to say thank you so much for explaining your life and some of it and your thoughts. Thank you for being here today and pouring into the community that is learning through the language of play. Thank you for taking the time to spell out for parents what will be helpful for them. And I will have in the show notes your contact information and a link for the book. And what would you like to close out this interview telling people, telling the listener?
Thank you for asking that. Closing out the interview, the final thought for me is, if you are feeling overwhelmed by all of the stuff, congratulations, you are right on track. Welcome to the club. Validate however you are feeling. Know that it is a lot and that you can pick just one thing or just one or two small things to say, maybe today I will really understand the goals in my child's IEP to make sure that the services are helping that. Today, I'm going to know that my child is going to have a tantrum and view that as communication and watch how I behave differently. Maybe I'm going to call my insurance company. There's a whole chapter about insurance, which is my favorite chapter because it was actually fun to write, super weirdly. But I'm going to call my insurance company and figure out how to get reimbursed so that I can get a check in the mail. Just pick one thing, know that it's okay to be overwhelmed, and know that however you are feeling, that you will feel better.
Very nice. Yes. Have some compassion for yourselves, listeners, if you are in this situation. And if you are not, and you know somebody that is in this situation, I'll ask you to send this episode, share it with them, because this is very, very good and very helpful. Thank you again, Kelley, for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
As a reminder, Kelley's book is on sale. I believe it goes published live tomorrow. So look in the show notes. By the time you hear this, it's probably live. I will have a link there for you to order her book as soon as you can. And of course, email me at hello@thelanguageofplay.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Hey parents, I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who also lives or works with children? I would really appreciate it if you would leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. I read every review, and it lights me up to know that this show is making a difference. Then come join my Facebook community, where you'll meet other parents who are dedicated to helping their children grow too. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to go. Let's pop our kiddos in the strollers and go look around outdoors and see what we have to talk about.